Hello and thanks for staying with us. Welcome to Political Platform on Raypower FM. My name is Amechi Anapwe. It's a decisive day, Wednesday midweek for ADC and PDP. The Supreme Court will today hear the leadership tussle case before it. Two things may happen. The Supreme Court may adjourn sine die or fix a date for judgment or may give judgment today to give reasons later. But time is of the essence because the period for which parties are to indeed submit the necessary documents to INEC ahead of the primaries that must hold in May is around the corner. Yesterday, the Court of Appeal dismissed an application brought before it by Julius Abure, claiming ownership of the Labour Party with a heavy cost on him, paid 10 million for wasting the time of the court. Now, as I welcome Adebo Bodore and TVTF to the studio, it's clear that the judiciary before now has been determining the winner of elections in Nigeria. After the people have voted, it doesn't end there. It gets to the Supreme Court. Now, with the leadership of political parties, after delegates have spoken, it doesn't end there. It gets to the Supreme Court again.
Good morning, Amishi, and good morning to TV in the studio. And I say a big hello to our listeners and the viewers on the YouTube platform. You see, it's so unfortunate that the kind of political parties we are having in Nigeria today. I keep on saying it, and I will insist on saying it, that as long as we play transactional politics, a situation where you have the Lord who wants to pick the candidates or select them, finance them, and become the sole controller, directing them on what to do. That is what the political parties have been turned to. The kind of political parties we have in Nigeria are not being run like the typical political parties. If you're a student of political science, the kind of theory you learn about what political parties are supposed to be, the parties we have in Nigeria are just not that. The leadership is also unpicked. And when sometimes they force themselves. If you look at the issue of the Labour Party you have just mentioned, the authentic leadership of the party was from Ezoze Ejiofor, the comrade, the Labour activist, to Dan Wayawu. That was at the time when we have leadership. If you look at the other leadership that came, even my good friend, may so rest in peace, Absalam, went to Akwanga, carried a few people. He was secretary of the party, and he returned from Akwanga and said he's now the national chairman of the party. This took for Abure. Abure was secretary. He organized. He was the one after the death of Absalam. He organized his own convention and say he proclaimed himself the chairman of the party, and he came into national prominence during the 2023 election. So you can see, and the same thing is applicable in virtually almost all the party. Parties don't hold election; they are selected, even though they have convention. They are handpicked. Somebody, a big man there, is the one that is directing the process. Yeah, there is no party, and I insist there is no party today. That you don't even have party supremacy is dead. So when you don't have such things, the resort to court is for them to hold on to that position they have acquired. They are acquiring it. It's not as if people willingly pick them. So that's why you see the resort to court to determine the leadership of.
And the court will be laughing. The lawyers will be smiling. They're smiling to the banks because the charges they give politicians, either for pre-election or post-election matters, is in hundreds of millions of naira, sometimes billions. Yes, some big law firms charge in billions for post-election petition. If you want to go to the tribunal, especially if you're a governorship candidate or if you're a presidential candidate. And so when it comes to the party affairs, which the Supreme Court has said we should not get involved, lawyers are also smiling to the banks because more and more cases are getting there. TVTF. Now, if you want to describe Nigeria's democracy and you show what is happening in the political parties, you may say clearly it depicts what we are seeing. But some people are still insisting that could it be just mere coincidence that all the major opposition political parties have cases in court? Yesterday, some forum of ADC lawmakers held a press conference, and in a very strongly worded statement, they accused the president directly, attributing his statement he made when he described the ADC convention as a street convention. They strongly pointed fingers at the chief of staff to the president, who told Warren Abejide and Nafiu Bala to go remain in ADC and scatter the party. They are appointing an INEC chairman who he said is clearly partisan and has taken side with the APC in undermining the ADC. Now, these are the issues before the opposition parties. Is it self-made or hand of visa behind it?
You see, what we have or what we are looking at, the APC will tell you, provide the evidence. If you say the ruling party is involved, bring the evidence that they are the ones causing it, But now people are pointing at what the president said. People are pointing at what the chief of staff, have said. Whether those are strong evidences to say
scatter them,
they are responsible, is a different thing altogether. But politicians will always be politicians. What I know is that
was it a slip from the point of the president, or was it a slip from the point of the chief of staff?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't because that was not the only thing he said about the ADC or the opposition parties. He said, several other things, or how coming into it was difficult and all of that. But now that he's here, and all of that. So you can't. But I think the opposition parties should look at it positively because there is so much. This speaks of arrogance of the governing party. It speaks of overconfidence, of the governing party, and all of that. So they can take advantage of it. Oh, these guys are taking us for underdogs, and all of that. So let them continue that way. If you observe, this was almost what happened in 2015. PDP, the game changer, it's not possible incumbency, and all of that. But we saw an opposition that was determined, and they were able to, so they should look at it from a positive light. I'm happy the factional ADC chairman and David Mark said at the convention, said, look, that the more they try to divide and attempt to strangle the ADC, the more united the members become. So that is what they need now, that unity. I hope that the contest for the ticket will not divide everybody.
Now, you have a strong point, because I was having this conversation with some people yesterday. It didn't start with APC and ADC. No. It happened with PDP and other opposition parties. The more PDP hounds them, the more, if they show resilience, yes. If they refuse to capitulate, if they persevere and show strength and continue to soldier on, the more stronger, because there's this balance. What can't kill you will strengthen you. Yes. So if they throw at you and you grab it and you continue moving, it strengthens you, not just by power but in unity, and most importantly, public opinion. Okay. When you're the victim mentality, if you're perceived as a victim, both national and international sympathy will be on you. And once that happens, the ruling party becomes desperate. They become desperate and jittery, and will likely commit more blunders.
Yes. Let me just give you this story of, I was in neighboring Nasarawa State, one of the government offices, and jokingly, somebody there was like, when they were monitoring the developments on social media, and all of that, he was like, people should finish, or he wants to go to the convention in Abuja.
For what party?
It was the day ADC was having, their convention. He was saying it jokingly and all of that. I'm very sure he was not going to go. The way he was, manner he was. But that tells you, the sympathy mentality we're talking about now and all of that. So it is something that the opposition, the ADC and others should build on, moving forward. What happened? Even with the recognition of de-recognition of David Mark, we saw what is his name now? The factional PDP faction. I think Abiru or what is his name?
Turaki.
Taminu Turaki. We saw PRP. We saw, which other party again went on sympathy visit. And we also heard reports that about 10 of the opposition parties are trying to put together, an alliance or coalition or something, so that they will work together against, the ruling APC. So imagine that the Turaki faction, the PRP, maybe SDP or any other,
even NDC.
NDC. Imagine that they formed a coalition to work against the ruling party. It's part of the opposition. The ruling class may think they are doing.
That's where I wonder about it to come in. Some people believe that it was the strategy of the ruling party to destabilize the opposition party. Some people will believe the ruling party has since denied that, continuously have denied that. But from pattern, people are saying that strategy may have ran against the ruling party, because if you had allowed PDP, had allowed the Labour Party, had allowed ADC, Peter Obi would have remained in Labour Party, Kwankwaso would have remained in NMPP, and Waziri, Atiku Abubakar would have been in his ADC or something like that. That it became only one option for them when all the parties have one trouble to the other. That the strategy of the ruling party may have backfired by pitching all of them in one party.
Well, we are watching out for the game that will probably come out, but it happened in some African countries where what was thought to be minor political parties came together, and when they came together, they became formidable. And the candidate they came up with, very young man, won the election.
Senegal, for instance.
Yeah, Senegal, yeah.
From prison.
From very young guy. He was even in prison because the ruling
they stopped Sanko from contesting. So he said, okay, this will be the candidate, and he made
he was in prison. They selected him, very young man, and he won the election. Because they came together. That is, and everybody, the opposition parties have something to learn also even from APC, because they came together in 2013 and they started working together. They became formidable, and they got power since then. So if they are serious, if the opposition parties are serious, I'm not saying they will defeat the APC, but if they are serious and they want to be a formidable force, it's better for them to come together, present a common front, present a common candidate, and campaign for that candidate. And we have seen examples. I keep on using that example. When it became clear that in 1979 that the APM was so formidable in the north, and they are going to win all the states except Kano, where PRP was so strong then. In Kaduna, what did they do? They came together, all the candidates of MPP then, UPN and others, they stepped down for Balarabe Musa of the PRP. Despite the fact, and when they came together, Balarabe Musa won the election, even though he did not, his party, the PRP, did not have majority in the then Kaduna State House of Assembly.
And he was eventually impeached.
But the fact remains that they are coming together, play a formidable role, that Balarabe Musa became. So
the coming together of the opposition leaders was as a matter of survival.
Yes, it is.
Because they knew that the only option left was to stay together. If Labour Party had been there, Peter Obi would have a bragging right. I say have an option. If NMPP had been there, without crisis, Kwankwaso would have said, let me manage my Kanu and expand to
other places
and all that. But for APC in 2014-2015, it was a product of deliberate strategy and plan that saw them come together. But for the ADC now, it was more of a survival instinct.
Yeah, exactly.
So we watch out for what will happen, and we hope that the choice of their standard bearer will also not put them asunder later.
One thing
because
about
the major thing
yes.
is if they are serious,
yes,
and they think what they are saying, they love Nigeria. They want Nigeria to be galvanized to greatness. If some people have to subsume their ambition and ensure that they have a candidate, one candidate that you probably will support.
They have two big tests. They have passed the first one. In fact, they surpassed it.
Yes.
The argument had been, can Peter Obi and Atiku be in the same party?
Yes. And
Amechi, and they were in the same party. They surpassed it in the sense that Kwankwaso joined them.
Yes.
Now they met the first option and surpassed it. The second and the last is, will they decide on a ticket without rank or without anybody pulling out?
That's what
APC will be praying and hoping and working apparently to make sure that it's not possible. Because if it happens, one of the conditions I always put forward for an incumbent to leave, to be defeated in an election, is when you achieve unity of opposition. If that happens,
yes.
then the APC will know that this is a very tough one.
If that happens, I'm sure all the bragging and the overconfidence the ruling party has,
the arrogance
and all will end. They will know that they are indeed in for a serious fight, despite the fact that they have about over 30 governors, and all that. Because we had governors whom their spouses and children went to vote for Labour Party while they belong. So
they confess
openly, so it will get to that point, and by the time they are able to achieve that, that public sympathy, they were able to galvanize it amongst Nigerians. Nigerians will feel, okay, now there is an alternative to what the ruling party, is offering. It's no longer this one party state that people are afraid of, that there's an alternative to what is on offer. And at that time, if they also provide a different roadmap to the future of the country, different from what what's it called now, APC is coming. Because to me, it's not just the opposition coming together, all of that to grab power. When you get the power, what will you do with it? Okay. Because this is what the APC told Nigerians: change. When they
$1 to $1.
When they came, it became different. And the promises, they started denying promises. I said the presidential candidate didn't make it.
It was
this
the
person
party.
that made it. It was this person.
It was some billboards that we saw.
So we advise Nigerians, even when they come together, what message do they have?
Okay.
Let me just say it.
Yes.
And if they are serious, for example, they succeeded in raising a committee. And that committee was headed by the former governor of Edo State in the aborted Republic, Oyegu, who was at one time the national chairman of APC. He was the chairman of the manifesto committee. They have presented the manifesto, which they drafted to
the convention, the NEC and the convention.
To the convention for approval. It has been approved.
Okay.
And so we are waiting to see, let them unveil it and let us see what are they offering us. And how serious are they?
Now, the options for the ADC, if they go into direct primary, everybody knows that it will be very dangerous for the party. One, they will waste resources. They should have preserved for the main election. Apart from because money is a factor in the election. Second, the conflict that will arise. Can they manage
manipulation
it after that election? So when you go into a very keenly contested competition, it always bad blood. So their hope is that the issue of consensus will prevail, and they will save their energy, save their unity, and drive it into the main election. APC will be hoping that it doesn't happen.
I listened to the address, the speeches by most of those leaders, and one that struck me in respect to what you were saying was that by Aminu Tambwa. He said, when the time comes, they will talk to Atiku, they will talk to Peter Obi, they will talk to Konkoso as their brothers, as their party members, and all of that over them. And how can they solve this? If, for instance, we're already seeing Peter Obi, Konkoso.
Okay.
Call
it okay Nigeria.
So
Obi,
two of them are already out of the equation. Can they say, okay, somebody else will be SGF, somebody else will provide
so
this
sharing power now?
By the time you
before the election,
by the time you do that, people know that they have a stake.
They say produce Senate President, produce Speaker, produce SGF,
by the time
produce Minister of Power.
Exactly. By the time that is done, they will know that they have stake. That was one thing saying Peter Obi failed to do in 2023. He will say, we don't negotiate, we will not don't give anything.
Okay.
You must, as politicians, trade. And that is the way, when you trade these positions and all of that, you gain that kind of...
It's all about give and take in politics. And talking about sympathy, the decision of the High Court in Kaduna yesterday to set a date in June to determine the bail application of Nasir El-Rufai. If you look at it from many angles, many questions arise.
A number of
a federal high court had already given him bail. The normal thing is, let's adopt the bail condition set by a court of concurrent jurisdiction. Some people are alleging, that's what they are alleging, that the idea is to keep him in detention because the High Court said let him be with ICPC. Till after the convention, the primaries of ADC. That's what some people are alleging, not statement of fact. Now, that is the news out there. Even the enemies of El-Rufai have come out in his defense. The likes of Professor Chinodi Kalu, out of pity, out of, this is the victim. That's the mistake. When you go against a fly with a sledgehammer, that's what you get. So the sentiment out there is that they are intentionally detaining this man. So we must do all within our powers to teach them a lesson. That's what the ruling party don't sometimes realize.
You know, I'm sure the ruling party or those putting on this theory and all of that know the role he played in 2023.
Yes, he used the same method.
The same method as governor from the north.
Yes,
to rally the northern governors and say this presidency must go to the south, and that was how Tinubu stood a chance. And they know what he can do.
He went to court. He took on Buhari. He took on the CBN.
Exactly. And this discussion and negotiation will say they must have. If he were out, definitely he would have been a very strong instrument, you know,
in terms of strategy.
In terms of strategy and all of that. But at least the fact that they are not denying access to him, he can also, even in prison, we saw people wrote letters and all of that. He can also
even drug barons in the
we have seen
we are running their cartel from prison. But these are the little details that matter. That will matter in the election.
I mentioned we spoke about Senegal, how a president emerged from prison. Even in Nigeria, Iyola, the one who became senator, he won election as a senator from prison. And he was in the National Assembly for 4 years. So we have seen that instance where
won election as governor of Abia State in 2007 from prison.
Recently, there's somebody in one of those state constituencies in Enugu State, Labour Party.
Yes, that one.
I'm not sure he's even out of prison yet.
So sometimes those in authority will say, detain him, hound him. We are not saying that is work, but it didn't start today. The suspicion didn't start today. PDP started it. Detain him, get it. Most times it backfires. That's the idea. So those along the corridors of power, there are some few people that should put their thinking cap to tell them the plain truth. Okay, this one it may backfire. But let's hear from you. Let's read some of the mails you have sent to our email box.
Okay, thank you, Amici, and welcome to the mail segment. I am Chidera Izudoye. Writing from Kuje in Abuja, Chidike, age of 4, is saying, when I heard late evening yesterday of the sack of the finance minister Wale Edun by President Tinubu, I congratulated the man and shared in the joy of his relief. The same news hangs on the necks of the service chiefs, the power minister, the agricultural minister, and indeed any cabinet member who is unable to wave a magic wand and clear overnight all the administration's self-incurred problems. Desperate measures such as what we have and seen in the introduction of the electricity ban regime, the removal of tariff on rice importation, are what this administration is scrambling for, to create apparent relief and stabilize prices. In all this, we've watched how in 3 short years, this administration has ruined the achievement of the past government, has outpaced them in buckling rice debt profile, plunged Nigerians deeper that misery and destitution, and that indeed we have not been so unlucky in governance. Wada Yahaya from Central Area is saying the sacking of the Minister of Finance, Mr. Wale Edun, by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu yesterday is one that may have come as a good tiding for many Nigerians, especially the indigenous contractors who have not been paid since 2024 and subjected to untold hardship. Under the watch of Wale Edun as the Minister of Finance, we witnessed an outrageous increase in debts and lack of budget performance by the federal government at the time we are made to understand that government is generating more revenue. And in the same line, but from Port Harcourt, John Peters is saying, yesterday's conversation on the police pension scheme demands more than talk. It demands action. What constitutional barrier makes reform impossible when the military has successfully exited the same scheme to protect its retired personnel from hardship? Why must police officers be condemned to suffering after decades of service? I recently visited a private school in Akwa Ibom State where I met a retired policeman whose story should trouble the conscience of this nation. A retired superintendent of police who served Nigeria for 35 years across 19 states now works as a gatekeeper in a private school, not by choice, but by survival. He told me he had 16 million naira in his pension account, yet 2 years after retirement, he has received only 1.5 million naira, which he used entirely to settle debts incurred while waiting endlessly for his own money. The remaining 14.5 million naira is still out of reach. Meanwhile, his health is failing, worsened by hunger and neglect, and forcing him into the job where he endures daily indignities just to stay alive. This time, the time to act is now. Amend the policy, release these funds, restore dignity to those who have already given their strength and years in service to Nigeria. And finally, from Madala, Clifford Alozie is saying, the president's comments describing the ADC convention as street gathering and noisemakers is reckless and condemnable, to say the least. As if it was not enough, his chief of staff, Femi Bajabiamila, instructed Mr. Leke Abejide not to join the APC, but to stay in ADC to make sure he remains a thorn in the flesh of the African Democratic Party. Funny enough, they will still deny that they are not the problems of the opposition parties. It is quite unfortunate that this kind of hate speech are digging the foundation of electoral crisis. The likes of Bishop Matthew Hassan Kuka, the former military head of state, General Abu Salami Abubakar, and others turn blind eyes on this, only to come out a few days to the general election for the signing of a dead peace accord that is of no use to Nigerians and will disappear till the next 4 years. And that is how far we can go on the mail segment. Keep sending in your mails to politicalplatform@darkgroup.com.
Thank you so much for the mails. Well, just before this program, while we were in the newsroom, we were having some pre-production discussions, and the issue of belonging, plugging to the center came up. Socket, I think it was a former governor of Cross River State, Professor Ayade, that said when he moved from the PDP to the APC, then that they want to socket to the center. You socket your device to the center so that you tap directly from there. Now, those in opposition say sometimes they raise allegations that they are not getting what is fed to them from the federation simply because they are in opposition. Key example is governor of Zamfara State. He has said other states that are in government belong to the party at the center are getting so much, while what is due to Zamfara doesn't get to it. And yesterday at the Asoro Presidential Villa, Abuja, the governor of Enugu State, Governor Peter Mbah, led a delegation of the state to visit the president, and the issue of gas pipeline came up. Now, before, the gas pipeline that was drawn didn't get to the southeast. The gas infrastructure master plan, it didn't get to the southeast. But after that visit, during that visit, we are hearing that it's beginning to get to the southeast. And we're talking about get to Enugu, and we're saying a critical national infrastructure like that, must it be because you're in the ruling party? Should we subject to critical national development, to partisan issues, or should it be for the development of Nigeria, irrespective of your religion, irrespective of your party, irrespective of your ethnic group?
I mean, see, what bothers me most, and it has been the trend since 1999, at the commencement of this Fourth Republic, is the tendency to reduce developmental issues to partisan pronouncement.
Primordial
Partisan pronouncement, partisan consideration, and it's not too good for us. What it does is that it stifles concrete initiatives, positive initiatives that will probably help to galvanize Nigeria into greatness. There is no need for any state in the country to be denied what is due to another state or what another state has got. When you look at what is happening, you see geopolitical blocks either lobbying, begging, or promising political loyalty to the sitting political office holder. It's not healthy for us. The late President Buhari made a pronouncement. I belong to
nobody.
I belong to nobody. I belong to everybody. That's supposed to be the operating.
That's the guiding principle.
That should be the guiding. And once we deviate from that, it means we are not thinking of galvanizing Nigeria.
You not be a statesman.
Pronouncements are different from actions in most times. The same Buhari that you are mentioning also said, those who you want me to take this into those who did not vote for me.
Those who gave me 5% against those who gave me 97.
That's part of the problem.
And his total was 102.
That's what I'm saying. Partisanship.
I was referring to the same Southeast that we're talking about.
Partisanship.
Southeast has been marginalized right from the civil war, and all of that. It's not just the gas. What of the railway corridor? At what point did they talk about the eastern corridor of the railway?
It's a single gauge that was extended to the eastern. Every other region is going for double gauge.
And it's not just the southeast. Different zones have different marginalization stories to tell. And
yes,
all of
one
that.
way or the other.
It's quite unfortunate, but I hope that eventually we may have a solution to this. It's beyond even the partisan politics we're talking about. When you were talking about it, I thought you would make mention of Second Republic. It's not just the Fourth Republic issue. Even the NPN, those days, they were concentrating on NPN states. Well, and all of that. That's why
no wonder that Second Republic collapsed like a pack of cards. So there's this saying in Igbo, literally translated to English, it means if you're holding someone on the ground, you don't want the person to stand up. You yourself is on the ground. You can't stand up because the moment you stand up, the person stands up.
So it's the nation that is suffering.
The nation will suffer when you want to hold any part of the country down. The nation. That's why we need statesmen to rise beyond all these sentiments, to look at Nigeria as a single entity on a map. Thank you so much for joining us today. Have a good time.